combining fingerstyle jazz blues rhythm with a walking bass line key of G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's break that down. Hello friends, and welcome back to Swiftlessons for another jazz blues rhythm guitar tutorial. In recent lessons, I've broken down different varieties of the very common jazz blues 12-bar progression. Well, in today's lesson, we're just going to be taking that technique to the next level. We're going to be learning how to add in the element of a walking bass line between each of the changes. So I'm going to take you through it measure by measure. I'm going to do my best to explain how I came upon the notes that I'm using, and you can follow along using my tablature at patreon.com/swiftlessons. Support the channel there and gain access to a ton of extra resources for all my popular YouTube guitar lessons. Now, let's get started. Okay, close look at the fretboard. First, getting started reviewing the chord progression that we're working with. It's a 12-bar jazz blues progression, this time in the key of G. Now keep in mind, if you want a full lesson on the jazz blues 12-bar progression, you can find that just by clicking the card right up here at the top of the screen. Okay, running through this progression real quick, we're getting started with one measure of the one chord, G7, add 13. All right, adding a little bit of flavor into our blues this time. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, before moving on to the 4 chord, C9. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're back to the 1 chord, G7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for the next measure, we would ordinarily just stay right where we are, but I'm going to throw in a few extra chords. A split measure, D minor 7, back to the G7, add 13. And then that will set up a nice transition to the C9 chord shape. So far you have G7, 1, 2, 3, 4, C9, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, 4, a D minor 7, G7, and C9, 2, 3, 4. Okay, moving on to measure 6 now. We've got C sharp diminished. 1, 2, 3, 4. That adds a lot of tension, gets us back to home base. G7, add 13. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now moving on to measure 8, we have another split measure. A B minor 7 chord, this is our 3 chord in this key. 1, 2. All right, then the very intense E7 flat 9. 1, 2. That gets us to our minor 2 chord, A minor 7 4 measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5 chord D9. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the turnaround. All split measures here. The G7, 1, 2. The E7 flat 9, 1, 2. The A minor 7, 1, 2. And then now something new, a variety of the 5 chord, D7 flat 9, 1, 2. That sets up a lot of tension to get us home to the G7 add 13. Okay, put all that together and we have G7, 1, 2, 3, 4, C9, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, 4, D minor 7, G7, C9, 2, 3, 4, C sharp diminished, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, 4, B minor 7, E7 flat 9, A minor 7, 2, 3, 4, D9, 2, 3, 4, G7, E7 flat 9, A minor 7, D7 flat 9, and G7 add 13 for the resolve. Okay, if you can play all those chords and you can play through the progression, then you're ready to start adding in some walking bass. Okay, great work everybody. Now that you have the chord progression down, you're ready to start adding in these walk-in transitions between each chord. Getting started with line 1 of our tab, first a demonstration. It's gonna sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And that last chord gets you to line 2. Okay, so that began with the G7 add 13 chord, 3rd fret low E, 3rd fret D, 4th fret G, 5th fret of the B string. All right, we are transitioning between this chord and the C9. Okay, so I had the G7 at 13. I'm hitting the bass, then the highs, G string and B string, and then I'm gonna walk the A string, 2nd fret, up to 5, and then down to the 4th fret, walking down to the bass note of the next chord. That's also called an enclosure technique because we're kind of surrounding this target note, the 3rd fret of the A string. All right, then from there we're gonna play. All right, transition back to the G7 add 13 chord. All right, so we had the C9, we hit the bass, then the highs, B string, G string, maybe a little bit of the D string. All right, then 1-0 on the A string. And then the next note that we would have in the walk down would be the 4th fret of the low E string, but we're not gonna play that note by itself. We're gonna get fancy and thicken it up by playing the 1 chord, G7 add 13, up 1/2 step, all right, before descending down. Okay, so far we have 2 measures of music. G7 add 13, 1 and 2, 3, 4, C9, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now moving on to measure 3, we're gonna play a walk up to D minor 7. Okay, so the G7 add 13, again, we're playing the bass, then the highs. All right, then simply we're gonna walk up 2nd fret A, 3rd fret to the 4th fret. All right, that completes line 1. All in all, we have so far all right, now we're ready to move into line 2 of our tab, which will sound like this real slow. Okay, so this line of tablature begins with a transition between D minor 7 and G7 add 13. Again, it sounds like this real slow. One more time. Okay, and ultimately it drops you off on the C9 chord shape. So we have the D minor 7 chord shape. The full chord is 5th fret A string, 3rd fret D string, the 5th fret G string, and the 6th fret B. This is a big time stretch here, but luckily we don't actually need this index finger down because we're never going to touch that string. Okay, so if this is too much of a stretch, ditch the index finger note. All right, we're gonna hit the A string by itself, then play the highs, G string and B string. Jump the root note up to the low E string, walk down to the 4th fret, and then down to the 3rd fret as you set up the G7 add 13 chord. All right, at this point, I'm gonna leave my middle finger up and I'm not gonna fret it because I'm gonna need it to transition. I'm playing the G7 add 13, playing the root note first, then the highs, then I'm gonna go to the 4th fret of the A string, which is the upper neighbor to the C note, which is going to be the root note of my next chord. Okay, so we had the D minor 7, the walk down, G7 add 13, then the 4th fret A string, and then that gets us to C9. All right, for the next measure. All right, so one more time. With the count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, now measure 2 sounds like this. Really simple. C9 chord shape, the bass, the highs, and then 1-0-1 on the A string. With the count 1 and 2, 3, 4. All right, then finally we're going to the C sharp diminished chord shape for measure 3, where we're gonna play just outlining notes that are found inside the chord shape, which is 4th fret A string, 5th fret D string, 3rd fret G, and also the 5th fret B string. I hit the bass note, then the highs, just like I did on the C9 chord shape. Then I'm gonna play D string 2, up to 5, and then to the A string 4th fret, the root of the chord I just played. All right, then that'll get me back to the G7 add 13 chord for measure 7. Okay, playing all of line 2 together, it will sound like this. Diminished. And then that gets me to line 3 of our tab. Okay, now let's put lines 1 and 2 together. Okay, playing through lines 1 and 2 should sound like this. A 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, C9. 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, D minor. C9, 1 and 2, 3, 4, diminished. Okay, now this G7 add 13 chord is going to be the start of line 3, which is going to sound like this real slow. Alright, and that last chord is for line 4. Okay, so that began with the G7 add 13. This is not new. The bass, the highs, and then the A string, 2, 3, 4. Now we have a split measure between B minor 7 and E7 flat 9. Okay, so the B minor 7 is just frets 7, 7, 7, 7. A string muted, and the high E string is also muted. All right, we're hitting the bass, and then the highs there. Then with our pinky grabbing the 8th fret of the A string, the upper neighbor of the next chord's root note. All right, we're moving to E7, flat 9. Okay, so this chord, I've got the 7th fret of the A string, 6th fret D, 7th fret G, and then I'm barring over the B string, 6th fret. Very flavorful chord. Okay, so the B minor 7, 8th fret A, transition into the E7 flat 9, and playing the bass note followed by the highs. All right, from there, I can use my index finger to play the 6th fret of the low E string to walk me down to the chord A minor 7, or I could use my thumb for that note. That allows me to have the notes kind of cascade against each other. Okay, so then I've got the G7 add 13. All right, now onto the final measure of line 3, A minor 7. Very, very simple. A minor 7 is just frets 5, 5, 5, 5. Hitting the bass note followed by the highs, and then walking up. 2nd fret A, 3rd fret, 4th fret. I'm using my middle finger here, so that way I can transition to line 4 and the D9 chord shape. Okay, now putting together all of line 3, it should sound like this. 2, 3, 4, B minor, A minor 7. That gets you to line 4, finishing up, it'll sound like this. Okay, so that began with a very traditional walk down from our 5 chord D9 to our 1 chord G7. We just hit the bass note followed by the highs, then we're walking 3rd fret A string, low E string 7th fret, 5th fret, just following the major scale, down to the G7 chord shape. where we're going to have a split measure. G7, bass and highs, walking up to the E7 flat 9 chord shape. 5th fret A string, 6th fret, and then moving into the shape, hitting the bass and then the highs. Followed by a walk down note, the 6th fret of the low E string, either played with my thumb or my index finger. Okay, so far you have D9, walking down, G7. Alright, then A minor 7 chord shape, the bass, the highs, followed by a walk up note, 4th fret of the A string, playing the bass note and then the highs, this time of a D7 flat 9 chord shape. It's just taking the chord shape E7 flat 9 down one whole step. Alright, from there, another walk down note, the 4th fret of the low E string, followed by actually just a strum of the G7 add 13 chord shape. Okay, put all of line 4 together and we have D9, G7, E7, A minor 7, D7, G7. Okay, now playing through the entire routine, all 12 bars, we're getting started with G7 add 13, a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, C9. 1, 2, 3, 4, D minor, C9, diminished, G7, B minor 7, A minor, D9, walk, G7. Alright, just like that. Alright friends, thanks so much for checking out this jazz blues guitar tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. As always, big thanks to my supporters at patreon.com/Swiftlessons. Hope you're enjoying all these extra resources. And thanks to you guys, I got many more lessons coming up. So keep checking in, please subscribe, please share. This is Rob at Swift Guitar Lessons in Philadelphia, saying happy picking.